Okay, so before we get started today, I want to provide some information about the accessibility features of our Zoom platform. So if you would like to turn the captioning on today, you can please go ahead to the closed captioning symbol, which is at the bottom of your screen, and you can select the arrow to the right of that icon. The words underneath that icon should say something like live transcript. So you can either select show subtitles or view full transcript. If you choose the subtitle option, you are going to see the words at the bottom of your screen. But if you choose the full transcript, you're going to see words on the right of your Zoom window. But please just be aware that the full transcript view can obstruct your view of the chat. So please just keep that in mind. So we are recording today's webinar, which will only be accessible. It'll be accessible to the public via our YouTube channel, and I can share that recording with you all within a week from today. And with that, I'm excited to invite Elena Hurlburt, who is the Director of Assistive Technology Services at Oak Hill, Connecticut. And we are grateful to have her here today for her informational session on Oak Hill's consultative support during forensic interviews. And thank you just so much for being here with us today, Elena. I will pass it on to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Amanda. I appreciate it. Thank you for having me here. We appreciate the opportunity to get this information out there. And I'm just grateful for all of you for your interest in being here today to learn. So I will go ahead and get started with our topic today, which is Oak Hill specialized support during forensic interviews. Okay, so who are we? So I am Elena Hurlburt. I'm the Director of Assistive Technology Services at the NEAT Center. We are part of Oak Hill, and I will get into who we are at Oak Hill in just a moment here. But I do have other faces up here on the screen. Margie Hislop, Liz O'Brien, and Maggie Worm. They are my colleagues at the NEAT Center who also have expertise in communication as well as assistive technology. And together we are coming together to support this initiative to get information out there about supporting individuals with communication challenges during crisis situations, during emergency situations, and really just supporting them in having their stories told. So I definitely wanted to give credit there. But a little bit about Oak Hill. So again, that is the large agency that we work for. Oak Hill is most well known for their group homes around the state, as well as our specialized education programs that are housed within public schools around the state as well. We also have specialized centers, so we call them Oak Hill Centers, and NEAT is one of them, New England Assistive Technology, and I will get into that as well soon. But I do also want to mention we have a camps and recreation program, which is an adapted facility for individuals to participate in all types of fun camp-related activities. We have a facility in Hebron, and then we are affiliated with Camp Harkness in Waterford as well. So just a little sidebar there. You never know who might be interested in an opportunity like that. But what I really want to focus on is the NEAT Center as well as CRSE, the Center for Relationship and Sexuality Education. So that center was founded back in 2001, and it kind of stemmed from the need for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities to have opportunities to learn about their bodies, learn about how their bodies change as they get older, and learn about how to form healthy relationships, right? It's incredibly important to learn how to navigate our social world. And we were finding that those opportunities are not always presented to individuals with disabilities. So CRSE was established, and this center has a variety of resources and an adapted curriculum to teach sexual education to people. So I have the link there in case this is of interest to you. Again, if that's piquing something for you, no matter where you're coming from today, please know that whole center focuses on that topic specifically. Now hold that thought while I now talk about NEAT, and then I'll talk about how our two centers are coming together. So I specifically and directly work for New England Assistive Technology, or NEAT. We are one of the Oak Hill centers that focuses on providing assistive technology solutions for people, regardless of what their ability is, regardless of what their age is, right? So if somebody has a particular disability that prevents them from engaging in a certain task, or maybe doing something in school, or being employed in a certain location, we find technology that can help them overcome those barriers and perform that task, whether it's completely independently or at a level that is a little bit more independent than if they didn't have the technology in place. So we specialize in identifying what technology is best, and then helping people implement it, right? You could have a tool, but how do you use it effectively to make it really meaningful for you? So that is the center I work for. And now our two centers have kind of come together. It started, several years ago at this point, but it really all started with, awareness that the fact that people with intellectual and developmental disabilities are sexually assaulted at a rate 7 times higher than those without disabilities. So I'm going to get into that a little bit more. And I know it's a very hard fact to hear and to know. But it's really powerful for me to start with this story here. So this is a story about a woman named Natalie. This was published in NPR, again, several years ago at this point, a few years ago. And her story is incredibly powerful. So we're grateful that she's willing to have our community know about her story, and not just know about it, but learn from it and make some changes. So that's what we're trying to do, is make some changes. So I'm just going to read verbatim what is from this NPR article. Natalie moaned through the night. She couldn't sleep. She'd sit up on her knees in bed. She couldn't lie down. There was something she couldn't tell us, says her mother, Rosemary, but we had her multiple times at the doctor's. Doctors treated Natalie for sinus infections, for yeast infections, for more than a year, but the pain kept coming back. Until one day, a new doctor at an urgent care center, a woman, tried a test no one had thought of before. She's been diagnosed with gonorrhea. So Natalie, she's a woman with an intellectual disability. She's unable to speak. She doesn't have access to assistive technology, or at least she didn't at this time. So she was going through an incredible situation, but didn't have a way to share what had happened to her, or what doctors should look for, or to get the support that she needed. So obviously that hit us really hard. And then we dug further and again found the statistic of 7 times. And if you think about that number 7, it might seem a little bit small, but then if you really think about it, it's like, why should there even be a number at all, right? Why is that even higher, to begin with? So individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities are at a heightened risk at all moments of their daily lives, and are more likely to be assaulted by someone they know and during daytime hours. So among other really important facts from this NPR article, those were the 2 that we pulled from it and said, okay, what else can we do with this? What can we do to change it? So it is important, as we think about what changes we're going to make, that we are all on the same page with the fact that people with IDD are not inherently vulnerable to abuse, right? It's not because of their disability. They're not to blame for it. It's really the society that we've created surrounding them that makes them more vulnerable. So hearing this information, again, our 2 centers, CRSC and the NEAT Center, we started to identify barriers. Okay, like, why is this a statistic? Why is this happening? And I won't get into it, too in depth in it. We have a whole other presentation, which I know we're working on bringing to you all at the Alliance, that goes into these barriers in a lot more detail. But essentially, these barriers that we've identified can all be connected back to communication, right? Somebody's ability to understand receptively language that is being shared with them, as well as expressively their ability to convey their own ideas and their own experiences using communication. So again, we're trying to have a progression here. We know these barriers. What are we going to do to break them down and form solutions? So we've developed 3 what we call pillars to attack this situation. So we are striving to help individuals with IDD learn about their bodies and how to form healthy relationships. We are striving to give them empowerment and the tools to self-advocate, to prevent sexual abuse from happening, and just to overall promote healthy relationships, and to prevent abuse in general, not just sexual in nature, but abuse of all natures. Just to say, hey, I can stick up for myself. I can say no. I can stop this from happening. But the 3rd pillar, which is most relevant to our conversation today, is the reporting piece. So we really want to provide opportunities for individuals to report incidences of abuse. So when, sadly and unfortunately they do occur, what can be done so these people can share their stories and they can get the support and resources that they need. So again, we're working to implement all three of these solutions, but most related to the reporting element is our interest in making assistive technology available before an incident occurs, during an incident, as well as after an incident. So a bit later in this conversation, I'll focus more on the forensic interviews, but that is a huge element of what we're doing. Okay, you know, these cases are occurring. Individuals are going through investigative processes. How can they participate in those processes despite maybe their communication challenge? So if they can't speak verbally, how can we ensure that they are still able to be their own voice in their own investigation? So over the last, I'd say 2 to 3 years, we've become involved in a variety of forensic interviews around the state. And, you know, some have ended up really successful and ended with, you know, charges even, others not so much. So we're really trying to make this more widespread as a resource that we can share with our community. So this opportunity is made possible through a grant that we received through the Mentor Network. So we're really grateful for them for giving us the opportunity to participate in forensic interviews and be in a consultant role. We're also doing a lot of trainings to bring more awareness to the topic and help mandated reporters and, you know, first responders and police officers, school personnel, medical professionals, helping them understand this topic a little bit better. So it's really twofold what we're able to do thanks to this Mentor Network charitable grant. So I've mentioned assistive technology and communication and AAC a little bit so far, but I want to make sure that we are all on the same page with what that is, right? Maybe that's a concept or an idea that is new to you. So in general, assistive technology is an item, a piece of equipment, a system, a software program that is used to increase, maintain, or improve the functional capabilities of persons with disabilities. So anytime I read that definition, I'm like, whew, that's a long one. But essentially, again, it just means that it's technology that can allow somebody to do something a bit more independently when faced with a disability. So AT is the umbrella term. Under that is a subcategory called AAC, Augmentative and Alternative Communication. So it's a variety of devices. It's a system that somebody can use to communicate their ideas. So, you know, why might somebody use AAC? Well, we all have the right to communicate, you know. I'm sitting here today using my verbal communication to share an important message with you. But that's just one example, right? If you think about your day today so far, from the time you woke up to now, 1:45 p.m., I would imagine that a big chunk of your day has revolved around communication, whether it be for social purposes or to complete something at your job or to chat with a family member, solve a problem, advocate for yourself, call up Comcast and say, hey, why is my bill so high, right? It's all communication. So we communicate for a variety of reasons. And AAC can allow people who can't speak verbally to communicate and engage in their world for all of these different purposes. So to go a little bit further, who might benefit from using AAC? Well, somebody whose spoken language might not be effective for communication, but who can understand all of what you say. So somebody whose receptive language is very high, but for whatever reason, they can't speak in response to what you're saying to them, they might benefit. Another situation, somebody who might have difficulty understanding you. So again, that receptive nature, they might be able to use AAC alongside you as their communication partner so that a message can be understood and conveyed successfully from one person to another. Even thinking a little bit beyond, not even just people with disabilities, but maybe somebody who English is not their first language and it's your first language. And how do you break that communication barrier and have an effective conversation? AAC tools can help in that scenario as well. People who have hearing difficulties. They can't hear you speaking verbally, but maybe they can look at the technology and the symbols and the words that's on the AAC device, and again, be able to have that back and forth conversation with you. So there's so many different reasons why somebody might use an AAC device or a communication board, but I wanted to kind of set the stage for you if this is a new concept for you. To solidify even further, here are just a few images of a variety of individuals using different types of AAC devices. On the top left, this person is using probably an eye gaze device on their wheelchair, and she is controlling it via her eyes. So essentially the same way that I might manipulate a traditional computer mouse with my hand, she can control her computer screen with her eyes and make selections for what words she might want to say on that computer screen. Another more low-tech example is in the bottom middle, where an individual is using a T-stylus and pointing to different words on a piece of paper. So low-tech, there's no voice output to it, but this person can nonetheless point to different words and have the communication partner see what words are being conveyed. Okay, so a lot of different options here. I just mentioned low tech, so that is an AAC solution that is usually paper-based. Again, there's no voice output. It relies on somebody to look at what the person is pointing to. And it's really can be a quick and effective way to communicate. In the, I guess, bottom middle, you see a very large board. We call it a communication station. And at Oak Hill, we are working to put these large boards in not only on our campus in Hartford and throughout the state, but in community locations as well, different towns, parks, playgrounds, so that people can access communication no matter where they are. This is an example of a low-tech board that we've created for people to use in more medical emergency-based situations. You can see different words that we call core words. They make sense no matter where you are, things like go and stop and more, but also some context-specific words like emergency and medicine, blood, hot, cold, so things that might be more specific to a more urgent situation. On the back of this board is different diagrams of bodies and body parts with real images and real words. You know, we feel very strongly about providing access to reality so that somebody could convey their message very clearly, and there's no confusion, there's no guesswork. If they have to report that something has happened to them, we want them to be able to do so as efficiently as possible. There are MidTAC AAC devices that are battery operated, and you can record any message on it in advance. So for example, that big red button at the bottom, it's called a Big Mac, but as an example, you could record the message, I need help, on it. And that person who can't verbally say, I need help, could press their hand down on that big red button and it would say out loud that pre-recorded message, I need help. So just an example, a lot of different MidTAC options out there. And then lastly, we have high tech. So those are typically tablet-based devices that, you know, you can say any message that you would want to spontaneously say throughout your day. So again, just a nice way for somebody to convey a message if they can't do so verbally. So again, I could go into these different options in more depth in a separate training. But for the purpose of today, I wanted to kind of set the stage of what is AAC and what can it do? I will show this quick video and then I'll make the connection of, okay, we know what these devices are. What does it mean for this particular topic today? Here's a nice video of different kids using high-tech communication devices on their iPads.
So things really started to take off when we started using the iPads to talk to the students, using Proloquo Go. They then understood how they could use it. We really started to see some big changes in their behaviour, their use of the iPads, and their understanding of how they can use it to be a communicator themselves.
We might start off. Alana, do you want to tell us? Have you got some news to tell us? Tell us something you did at home. And Andrew or Tyrone, do you think you could make a positive comment? Okay, positive. Yes, I know you too well. Maybe better if you sit down, Alana. Sit down and tell us something you did on the weekend.
Shopping centre. Bev. Shopping centre, Bev.
You saw Bev at the shopping centre. Fantastic.
At the beginning of the year, their communication was to the teachers and the aides in the classroom, but through the year, they came to see each other as communication partners, and they started to tease each other and talk to each other. It was just really cool to see those peer relationships develop.
Fun. Did you have fun?
Did you have fun? Great question.
Mum. Hurt.
Oh, it wasn't fun because Mum got hurt. That's not good. Where did she get hurt?
Eye.
On her leg or her arm?
Sorry. Right foot.
Her right foot. Oh, poor Mum. Ouch.
Mum.
I think Tyrone's got something else to say to you, Mama.
I feel sorry bad, Mum.
I feel sorry for Alana's mum. That's lovely, Tyrone. Yes, we all feel sorry for your mum, Alana. We hope she's better soon.
I'm going to pause it there just in the interest of time, but I do have the link on this slide, and Amanda, I will share this PowerPoint with you so you can, share it with anybody who has joined us today. But, that's in a nutshell what a really powerful AAC conversation can look like and what our ultimate goal is with this technology. You saw that, especially Elena there, she was using her iPad to communicate, but also her body, right? She was sad and she was crossing her arms, right? So I think when we have conversations with people, with anybody, we need to be mindful of what our body language is saying and about our message as well. So now that we know what AAC is all about, let me try to progress to the next slide here. Oops, there we go. What does this all mean for forensic interviews and, helping people share their stories in these, unfortunate situations of abuse? Well, what we're doing is, again, trying to be a part of forensic interviews and offering our expertise and our tools and our resources. Sadly, oftentimes cases where an individual who's an alleged victim can't communicate verbally, they oftentimes are not included in forensic interviews, or the forensic interviews don't happen altogether. Now, I'm certainly not saying that as a blanket statement. We know they do happen, and they do happen well sometimes, but we want to make sure that they are happening all the time, right? So just looking back to that story of Natalie, right? That article went on to say that the police did not investigate her situation. They did investigate. They interviewed men in an outside care facility. There were no men at the house where Natalie lived. Natalie couldn't tell detectives what had happened. So the investigation went nowhere. No one was ever punished, and no one was ever stopped. So that scenario is something we don't want to ever happen again, what happened to Natalie. So that's what we're hoping can be changed by working collaboratively all together. You all on the screen, whatever your role may be, with us here at the Meet Center at Oak Hill to try to make this change. We are also trying to spread awareness that when AAC and these different technology tools are utilized in a forensic interview or just an investigation in general, the messages that are conveyed using the technology should be believed, right? There's a lot of misconceptions sometimes that when it comes from technology, it's not that person's idea, or there's a lot of different non-research based methods out there. Facilitated communication is just an example. That might suggest that the message is not, in fact, from that person, but we know that that's not true. Anything that is reported using an AAC device in an appropriate way can and should be believed. So in utilizing AAC and assistive technology in the investigation process, we know that any of the tools along that continuum that I showed you could be helpful, whether it's that low-tech paper-based board, that MidTAC device like that big red button, or a high-tech AAC device like the tablets you just saw those kids using. Any or all of those could be helpful in some situation. We do need to be mindful of using AAC in a way that aligns with the protocols that are used during forensic interviews. We know that there is a very strict and standard process, and it's there for an important reason, right? We want anything that is shared during that investigation to be able to be upheld in court if it gets to that point. So we're very mindful of that, and we work with forensic interviewers who have that specific expertise so that together we can, again, have that effective outcome. And we also know that AEC evaluations and interventions really need to happen before an incident occurs. So we absolutely do go into situations and investigations where the individual has never been shown an AEC device before, regardless of their age. Maybe it's just never been an option for them. While they can learn to use the technology right then and there, we know that most success is seen when the individual has already been exposed to the technology before the incident occurred, right? So again, we're just trying to get the awareness out there that these devices can and should be introduced at a very, very young age. Even, early intervention, birth to 3, this technology can and should be introduced. But that even if it hasn't been, that doesn't mean that that prevents the person from going through that investigation. So I hope I'm clear on that. I hope it makes sense. So if any of this is of interest to you, again, regardless of what your role is or what your perspective is on all of this, we want to help. So if this is of interest to you and you come across a case where you're working with an individual who's nonverbal or communicates differently and has some challenges there, but needs to go through this process, please contact us. I have the email up on the screen, and again, you'll get the handout afterwards. It is centersconnect@oakhillct.org. Just send us an inquiry, say you have this case, and we'll be able to jump on board as quickly as possible. And again, thanks to that grant, we can do so at limited or even no cost to you, depending on what the situation is. So what that would look like is we would participate in a meeting all together. So Oak Hill, the MDT, the team, anybody else who's a key player in that individual's case, we would all meet ahead of time to really just get on the same page. At Oak Hill, we would ask questions about the individual's communication. Do they have a device? If they don't, what body language can we be looking for? What other modalities might be helpful in this situation? We would then arrange an initial consultation where we would come out and meet that person. Pretty informal, just like hey, here we are, we have our technology, what do you think about it? We kind of just get a preliminary sense of if and how that person might be able to access the technology. Now, I do want to be clear that it's not a magic solution, right? I'm not going to pretend to say that we can come in and say, here's an iPad, tell us everything that happened to you. That unfortunately is just not the reality, especially if that person has never seen that technology before. But nonetheless, we can still get a sense of if that person might be able to learn how to use the system enough, or maybe can just show us a few different words that have some meaning to whatever the case might be. Then depending on that initial consult, I would, at Oak Hill, we would offer suggestions about if and how and when the interview could take place. And then if it is decided by the MDT to move forward with the forensic interview specifically, we could continue to be involved, bring our technology and kind of support the process and support that conversation along with the trained forensic interviewer, right? Like, we're not there to do the forensic interview, we're there to support the forensic interview. Okay. We would offer just different communication strategies. I've listed just a few here. Things like slowing down your speech, giving the person time to respond and process what's being asked of them. So with our expertise, we're able to kind of guide some of those strategies as well. We can offer support for creating social stories, which are a way to help somebody prepare for a new or unexpected event. So prior to a forensic interview, for example, maybe an individual with autism, they might be very anxious or unsure what's happening. I mean, anybody would be, right? But we could help you develop a social story that will help them understand what to expect in this interview, in this investigation. So again, that's just an example of something that we could do to help support the process. Okay, so here's the email again. If you have a case that you'd like to reach out about, or in general, if you just want to chat more about this or learn more, please feel free to reach out to us. Okay. And I know I'm sorry, right at 2 o'clock here, but I'm happy to answer any questions if anybody has things that they're still curious about.
Thank you so much, Elena. This has been very informative. And I just put in the sign-in sheet and evaluation in the chat if you would like to fill that out. And I will also pause the recording in case folks feel more comfortable asking questions without the recording.
Terrific. Thank you, Amanda.
Yeah.